Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today with me is Chris Soth to analyze 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. How you doing, Chris?
Doing great, Hal. Very excited to be talking about this one. This is
cool. What did you think of the movie in general?
On the whole, I really enjoyed it. It's for an indie film, very artfully made. It's certainly a great cast. Elevating the story, some great performances, and doing some very interesting things with story and character that you don't see it in a mainstream film, and that I think are great to talk about and for writers to learn and master. So we're excited to be diving into those today.
Absolutely. Yes, I absolutely agree. It's like they did some really interesting things here, and I have a couple of questions to ask you about those before we get started in just a minute. Hopefully everybody on the phone has had a chance to see this movie. If you haven't, here are our thoughts on the whole thing of spoilers, because we're about to tell you the entire movie. And please don't feel bad about that. What that means is when you go see this movie, you're going to get a chance to see it from a different perspective than everybody else. And what you're trying to do is to get better at screenwriting. The analysis we're going to do here today, I think, is going to be incredibly helpful for you. It's going to have you be able to sit in that room and spot certain things that are going on inside the movie that the audience isn't aware of. So this is still incredibly valuable. Even though we're going to tell you some of the surprises, you'll get to see how they're put in there from a structural perspective. Let me just kind of give you an overview of what we're going to do. With me, as I said earlier, is Chris Soth. Now, you guys already know Chris, most likely. Chris is... he sold a movie for $750,000 that was made, and it was called, Chris? Firestorm, yeah. And on top of that, he's the foremost expert on the mini-movie method structure, which once you understand this structure, you're going to see it in every movie you look at. And it makes it so easy to be able to create stories. So we're going to go through. I'm going to do a quick interview. Then we're going to talk about the mini movie method structure. He's going to take us through and explain it completely. Then he'll walk us through exactly how that structure showed up inside this movie. And for those of you who want to master structure or who want to write a screenplay, we will then spend about 5 minutes talking about the class. We have a 30-day class that is called How to Write a Screenplay in 30 Days. So if you want to write your next script, this is a great way to do it. And it's How to Write a Screenplay in 30 Days with the mini-movie method. So it gives you a chance to master the mini-movie method, this incredible structure. Then we'll do the logline challenge. Now, a lot of you sent in log lines, and I spent the entire evening last night going over them to try to determine which ones qualify really well for this. I've picked out 5, and when we get to that point, I will choose one of them to give to Chris. He then has 90 seconds to be able to create a story. And Chris has actually done this to different degrees of success at different times before for us. So it's always interesting to listen to what can somebody create in 90 seconds if they're a master at structure. Now, let me just check with you, Chris. How is it going through that process of being told, here, you got 90 seconds in front of the public?
It is harrowing, Hal, and thanks a lot for doing it to me again. But I will tell everybody that you're going to have 30 days to do it in the class, and you will probably never be in this rarefied situation. And I don't have to do it, and I'm a professional screenwriter breaking stories every day. I don't have to do it in anything but one of these calls. So you're never going to need this skill, but it's a great proof of concept that shows that this mini-movie structure is there and inherent in everything and can get you from fade in to fade out, with at least a rough outline, quicker than anything out there.
Well, I would say I'm sorry for doing it to you, Chris, but the truth is I like to see you do your magic. It's actually pretty cool, and some of the stories you've come up with have been amazing. Some of them have been things that I went, wow, I would never have gone in that direction, but I can see why you did. So it's always interesting. So I always look forward to that. I'm sure it's a different roller coaster ride for you. But here, let's talk about 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Cheryl and I went and saw this movie with another couple, and as we were coming out of the theater, the other lady says, she goes, every time I thought I knew what was going on, the story twisted and surprised me. Now, what she didn't understand, and she's not a screenwriter, and she had no idea that she's actually talking about the structure. When we went to dinner afterwards, what she and her husband were talking about most was, the amazing lead character and who she was and what she was like and how she never gave up and all that kind of thing. So let me ask you about this structure and character. A really great indie movie marries both. What's your experience or your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree with you. You and I do break down a lot of movies this way, and dozens for us, and I know I've done hundreds myself. And sometimes a plot point in a naturalistic drama is very hard to determine, and it might be, as you say, very internal, which is a change in a character, right? And you can do these 8 beats anyway. You can say, I'm going to start the character here and come up with 7 beats in between. I'm going to end them up there, right? And it's up to you to decide what those increments are that get them from absolutely moral to absolutely immoral, which I would argue is sort of similar to the arc Frances McDormand undergoes in 3 Billboards. So it might be internal or it might be very subtle as change sort of occurs in life. And when I say naturalistic drama, what does that mean? It means as we find it in nature. So most of us in our lives don't experience a lot of things we can immediately identify as plot twists or seem important right in the time, and that our life just changed. I can say if you sell a screenplay for $750,000, that's a rare exception. Your wedding, might be another one. The birth of a child might be another one. And we've all seen these things as plot points in many movies. And there's some deliberate choices here to kind of stray away from things that I would think of as plot points, or even to put them sort of offbeat and in the middle of a mini movie rather than the end of one, and save something internal and to the character's change as the turn of the mini movie. And that's sort of the deliberate choice by Mark McDonough to say, this isn't a genre piece. This is much more realistic, and things that change a person's life forever are not going to be realized till after the movie for them, and maybe not till the end of the movie for you. And the things that would seem to are going to be downplayed to give us the subtle understanding that that's not what this movie is about. That it is about the internal change, and I would say the morality and pain of the characters. Right.
Yeah, it was really interesting to. First to watch the different events, essentially the plot points, as you're calling them, that where something would change, and it changed the whole story. Right? It was really clear, especially with a couple of them. It's like, oh my God! And now we had to watch this woman react to that and deal with that and move through that. And I thought, I don't know if you thought that there was an arc or not with her, but. It was like we were seeing her character continually emerge in interesting ways based on what had just happened and what choices she made based on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll have an opinion on an arc. It's an unusual one, and one that is more common in indie film for a protagonist than it would be in your standard commercial film.
Okay. And did you want to tell us that now, or you want to tell us that while you're?
If I don't figure I'll forget it. But when I launch into breaking down 3 Billboards into the mini movie method, I'll start with that.
Okay.
If I don't, please remind me.
Okay. The other thing about this is it had kind of a ragged ending, and this is kind of typical, I think, for indie movies. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, I agree with you. When we say indie movies versus commercial movies, we're talking about budget, we're talking about money a little bit, and in general, wrapping everything up with a bow is sort of the realm of the commercial world, and to end everything nice in a pat manner, such that we understand it and there are no sort of tensions left. Nagging at us after is sort of the world of the indie film, and because it sort of satisfies the most people and is the strike zone for the largest demographic. An indie film, which I'm a fan of as well, anything on film, I want to see it, is going to satisfy a smaller group of people by saying to them, this is what life is like, as I was just saying about plot points and events in our lives. We don't get it wrapped up in a bow. Sometimes it's not going to happen for us. And we're going to be left feeling ragged, but nonetheless, we will still have an experience, and we can still take it as a story. Yeah. And that's what this film is doing. And it's a very they're 2 broadly different aesthetics, but there's room for both of them. You have to watch your budget to still be profitable. Shooting a smaller demographic, as I think 3 Billboards does, and with all of its critical acclaim, I think it's going to do very well, and we'll see other films from Mr. McDonough shortly.
So let me just ask you one more thing having to do with indie versus commercial. So other than just the ending being wrapped up really well in a commercial, is there really a lot of difference that needs to be there on structure? And by the way, I have to say this one thing. I have seen some indie movies before where I've been incredibly bored because they didn't do some of these structural things.
Right.
But in this one, it seemed like the structure was there, and it was really actually very strong. So, okay, now to you.
I absolutely agree with you. It's not a difference between indie and commercial mainstream films. It's a difference between good and bad.
Okay, yeah,
right?
Good point.
So we can see a bad commercial film that has poor structure, and that'll be why it's bad. And we can see a bad indie film, like you were just mentioning, that has poor structure, and that'll be why it is bad. So the difference, I would say, structurally is just sort of the size and spectacle and splashiness in the plot points you're choosing, as to whether they're hinging on a change in a relationship, hinging on an internal change of the character, which might be more the realm of the indie film, or they're hinging on a skyscraper blowing up, as it might be more in the commercial film, while John McClane jumps off it. Okay. Or something like that. So it's going to be more in that texture and what the plot points are that is going to be in structure. Every good story has good structure, and you can't get away from it by saying, I'm going to make an indie film.
Got it. Okay, cool. So, a lot of our writers now are using the structure that we're going to be talking about today, the mini movie method. And using them with producers on movies that they're making right this moment. And the producers seem to immediately just go, yeah, I love what you've done here, whether they know or don't know that the person used this particular structure. Could you kind of just give us just a couple sentence, overview that describes the magic of this structure?
Sure, absolutely. So the mini movie method is a way of chaptering your story or breaking it up into smaller bite-sized pieces that has 8 different pieces. So each one is 15 minutes long. If you're writing a 2-hour screenplay, you'll have 8 15-minute chapters. Okay, and that's just the simplest way to say it. But what it has that other structures do not is more smaller, more bite-sized pieces and more guidance at the end of each one as to what the turning point should be to send you into the next one. So everybody listening probably is sort of the three-act structure that has a end of Act 1 and an end of Act 2. That's 2 plot points. That's sort of 2 landmarks on your journey from fade in to fade out. Well, how much easier would it be if you had 8 of those landmarks along the way, of a journey of the same length from fade in to fade out, to better decide how your story is going to go and aid you in finally getting there from fade in to fade out. And it breaks your second act into 4 bite-sized manageable pieces, which make it a ton more easy and keeps you out of the the vast vacuum where screenplays go to die, which is always in the second act, in the middle.
Right. Then So can you take us through just kind of explaining just a little bit about each of the different mini movies so that they have a pretty good idea of it, and then you can analyze the movie for us?
Absolutely, and I hope as I say this, if you've seen 3 Billboards, you'll think, oh yeah, I was doing that, and then certainly if you remember this or take notes as I do go through this, and I go through three Billboards, you'll see, oh, it is doing exactly what Chris said. So mini movie 1 is the status quo and ends with the call to adventure. What does that mean? Well, we meet a protagonist in their ordinary world, the world that would exist and keep on going if they never got caught up in this story. But they and this world are about to change, and they are called to the adventure of that change at the end of mini movie 1. Now, that may be meeting an antagonist. That may be boy meets girl, which is still a boy meeting an antagonist in that case, in a love story. It might be finding a dead body in a thriller and realizing there's a killer out there and I have to find out who they are so that we don't end up with more dead bodies. Whatever the adventure of the movie is, the call to adventure will happen at the end of mini movie 1. That's page 15. We're only in Act 1 and halfway through it, and I've already given you more guidance than any other structural element or style will. End of mini movie 2. So through mini movie 2, the hero will usually be a reluctant hero and be in denial of the call. But at the end of mini movie 2, which is the end of the first act, whatever the adventure is or whatever the conflict is will reassert itself in a strong and undeniable way so that the hero has no choice but to be locked into the conflict. And there's the end of your first act. We always have to lock our hero into the conflict, Hal. Either by desire or circumstance, because if they can take their ball and go home, we've got a structural problem. Right. So there's a place the character touches on structure. Right. The character doesn't have to be in the story. They probably shouldn't be in most cases, unless it's their job and something like a cop or James Bond or someone we'll see who's quite driven, like Mildred in 3 Billboards. Okay. On then into the second act. So. Just to touch briefly, right? Mini movies 1 and 2 are what you've heard called the first act till now. Mini movies 3, 4, 5, and 6 are what you've heard called the second act, and this is where this is really going to save your bacon. And mini movies 7 and 8 will be what you have called the third act up till now. Okay, mini movie 3. The hero will try to solve the problem that's presented by this adventure, do all the ordinary things and make all the initial attempts that anybody confronted with this problem could or would, and one by one they will fail. And when the largest and sort of most spectacular of the ordinary sort of playbook is found wanting and does not solve the problem, mini movie 3 turns to mini movie 4. We realize the hero is not going to be able to solve this problem in the standard way, by turning to outside help, by borrowing whatever they need. That's not going to happen to them. Why? Because they're a hero, and they are the main character of a movie, and we expect more of them than we would for an ordinary person, okay? So this is why we make a movie about this kind of person. And you have to deal with a lot of logical issues in this. Why can't the hero just go to the cops in a thriller? Why don't they just tell the girl that they love her? You set those things aside. We'll see that backstory is visited in 3 Billboards. Many ways to do this. Okay, on then into mini movie 4. A bigger, bolder plan for the hero to rid themselves of this problem. And they gather whatever resources and allies they may need to make this plan. It might be stated, they might say, I'm going to do this. It might be implied, and we'll sort of figure out as they go what their plan is. It may be surprising as it's revealed, but they put this plan into action, and it backfires terribly because the antagonist was stronger than they realized. And it makes everything worse. And now we're halfway through the movie. That's the end of mini movie 4. Still with me?
Yes.
Okay. On then the second half of the second act, mini movie 5. So there was a real flaw in this plan, both that the hero didn't know the strength of the antagonist they were up against, but also they made a plan that did not require them to change. And the hero will realize that they need to change through mini movie 5. And at the end of mini movie 5, they will decide to change. And they will put a new plan into action in mini movie 6. So the decision to change, usually not in dialogue, usually implied, will tend to be our end of mini movie 5. And then in mini movie 6, they put this new plan into action, which will require them to change. So Luke Skywalker is going to go after the Empire, but this time he's going to have to use the Force. And the plan is reliant on that, for instance. Okay? And they put that plan into action, and it too seems to backfire terribly and seems that it will destroy the hero. And that's your end of mini movie 6. Now, don't over-literal me, guys. Don't think that this only applies to action adventure, the kind of thing that like Firestorm that I have written and am better known for. It might just break the hero's heart in a love story, but in whatever way is important to the story or genre you're writing in, the protagonist is destroyed and decimated. End of mini movie 6, lowest point, highest point of tension. And then we break into the third act. Ready for that, Hal?
Let's do it.
Okay. Mini movie 7 is the battle. The biggest battle of conflict between protagonist and antagonist there will be. This is the obligatory scene, or the scène-à-faire, the mano a mano. They may have had skirmishes till now. This will be the last one. Now, again, might it be, fisticuffs with exploding bombs? This is an action-adventure movie. It may well be, and it'll be the biggest spectacle we've seen. Might it be a war of words, like in a courtroom drama, or at a wedding ceremony where a man comes in to abscond with the bride or the groom? It might be any of those, but it is the biggest battle that we are to see in the entire movie, whether that is a literal battle or more metaphorical, as I just said. At the end of mini movie 7, that battle seems resolved. And if you're going to go on and have a full mini movie 8, you need a third act twist, which will come as 7 breaks into 8. And some movies, for instance, romantic comedies, very often don't have a twist at the end of mini movie 7 and just show a new status quo and they lived happily ever after for mini movie 8. But if you want some more mileage in your mini movie 8, a real tension to it, you want to write more than 3 to 5 pages for it, it's best to reset the tension. What the twist at the end of mini movie 7 will always do is reset the tension. Things have ended towards our greatest hope, and now they are swung wildly towards our greatest fear again. And at the beginning of 8, the hero will put things on the right track and get it back again. So, Hal, this is terribly obvious in all thrillers, right, and monster movies. A monster is killed at the end of mini movie 7, and then springs back to life, and we break into mini movie 8. So character previously thought dead is actually alive is classic as 7 breaks into 8, and then the hero will have to put down the monster again, and then there will be that brief 3 to 5 pages of new status quo, new equilibrium, a new world for the hero with the new self they have made in mini movie 8. So mini movie 7, again, the big battle. At the end of 7, it turns and either is rejoined or has ended, and we have a new status quo in mini movie 8. So that, briefly, is sort of a thumbnail sketch of all 8 mini movies. And I think, if you jotted that down or listen to the recording again, it's going to change your screenwriting just that alone.
Excellent. Well done. Nice thumbnails. Okay.
Thank you.
So now then the question is, how did that show up in Three Billboards?
Okay, as I say, in some cases more subtly, and certain mini movies turn much more classically. Okay, so I said I was going to mention the main character's arc. This is Frances McDormand playing Mildred Hayes. Now, I would say that this is one or two ways to view it. You can either say she doesn't really change, or you can say that it is a downward arc. And I'm a little more attracted to and interested in the second, which is to say she does not achieve healing. She does not become a better person. If anything, her actions become less and less moral as we go on. I think that's really part of the theme of the movie, and how sort of broken and more shattered or lacking satisfaction she will become. And I'll start right away with pointing out the difference between a classic genre film and a drama, which this is. This deals with crime, and yet it's not really a full detective story. It sort of feints at being a detective story, and then at the end we'll say, but not really. And it's much more interested in character and what it is to want to understand this mystery than giving us the answer to it, if that makes sense to you. So, a thriller would begin with the murder in question, and then we would meet the characters who want to solve that murder. We've seen Frances McDormand do this herself in Fargo, but not at all here. The murder is in the backstory, and we only learn about it in short references and occasional flashbacks. So the movie begins, and this again is Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, written and directed by Martin McDonough. Frances McDormand, playing Mildred Hayes, is driving along a deserted road and sees three billboards in disrepair. She gets an idea. She drives into town and asks to rent those billboards. And in this scene where she's talking to a character named Red, there's a real key insight to her character. There's a quick shot of a beetle on its back with its legs sort of flailing, trying to right itself. And Frances McDormand, after talking for a minute or two to Red, flips that beetle back onto its legs with her fingers. Now, I feel like in an indie film and a realistic film like this, you have to be careful with symbolism. And it's easy to miss because it could just be a thing a person does. But when we're in the hands of competent filmmakers, there's nothing somebody just does. And there's never something that's just included in the shot. It all has meaning. What does this character want? She wants to make things right so that she, like this beetle perhaps, can move on with her life. And she does so, right? We see her do so for the beetle, and we see her trying to do so and stuck like that beetle for almost the entire movie. So she rents these billboards, and she puts up a message on each billboard so that if you're driving in the direction the billboards face, you will read them in this order. The first billboard says, raped while dying. The second billboard says, and still no arrests. The third billboard asks a question, how come, Chief Willoughby? And within a few hours, the police department quickly picks this challenge up. And Chief Willoughby, played by Woody Harrelson, the sheriff, comes to see her and says, I'm trying my best to find your daughter's killer. There are no DNA matches in the database. I don't know what we can do. He also confesses to her that he has cancer and may be about to die. She says she knows. There's almost a reversal of roles here, Hal. It would have been very easy to tell this story through the point of view of the sheriff. who's investigating the case, and make the antagonist someone in the town driving them to do so.
Absolutely.
Frances McDormand, or Mildred Hayes, is almost the antagonist in this case, and she sort of drives everyone else to change, as you'll see, while she's on her downward character arc. So here's the call to adventure. She has been challenged by the sheriff to not go on calling for a solution to this case. She's going to fight ever more strongly to do it. In mini movie 2, we meet an assistant deputy, or a deputy, I guess, so there's a sheriff and a deputy, played by Sam Rockwell. The character's name is Dixon. He tries to get Mildred to stop pushing this investigation of the death of her daughter, Angela Hayes. Her church priest, her family priest, comes by and asks her to stop. And in the final couple of scenes of mini movie 2, her own dentist assaults her, and she flips the tables on him and puts his drill bit through his finger, which he was just going to use on her, to torture her under the guise of a dental examination or filling.
I thought that was a beautiful scene, by the way.
It was gorgeous. And she is arrested for assault. And now it looks like they're going to get her billboards taken down. But while Woody Harrelson is interrogating her, he coughs up blood from his pancreatic cancer. And something she says in that scene changes his mind about arresting her, pressing charges, and it's the fact that she throws in to help him and goes and gets medical help while he was arresting her that makes him relent and gives him more compassion for her plight. And he says to let her go. And so there's a triumph for our heroine at the end of mini movie 2. There's the end of your first act. Make sense so far?
Yes, it does.
Now, in mini movie 3, we are treated to some backstory here, and it is objectively horrible for anybody to lose a child, and particularly in the horrible and violent way that is described for Mildred, to have lost her daughter Angela. But what mini movie 3 delivers so well, but this has happened to people, and they don't all start a campaign with billboards driving the police to do their jobs better. And this key scene of mini movie 3 turns on this character beat. We see a flashback. I think it might be the only scene in which we see Angela alive. And she and Mildred have a fight in which Angela is asking for a ride into town. Mildred is refusing it. And Angela says, "Okay, I'll walk then. I hope I get raped." And Frances McDormand says, "I hope you do get raped." And of course, that is what happened. And this is why Mildred is so tortured. And we learn that, I believe, at the end of mini movie 3. So the story is deepened, the character is deepened, and that's the turn. Make sense?
Yep.
So that's how we see, in mini movie 3, and how in the film it might turn a little more on character and insights about character. In this case, for the audience, more so than for Mildred. But things pick right up again at the end of mini movie 4, or at the beginning of mini movie 4, as the advertising company for which she's running the billboards demands more payment for the next month and says that she is not, that she is in arrears. She is saved by someone donating the money anonymously. She doesn't even know who, though we are given the impression that it is people of Hispanic and African American backgrounds in the town, because Angela's been speaking out against the racism of the police force that has kept them from doing their jobs here. And as we go on to the end of mini movie 4, we spend a good time with the Woody Harrelson character, Chief Willoughby, who is now more sympathetic to Angela. And as well as 3 billboards in this movie, Hal, there are 3 letters. Chief Willoughby, not wanting to be put down by cancer, shoots himself in the head. He leaves a letter for his wife, a letter for Mildred, and a letter for his deputy. And with this twist, the movie takes a whole different direction.
So would you consider that to be the midpoint?
I'm actually not considering that to be the midpoint, because before we get there, and I think before Mildred even knows, a man shows up in the shop that Mildred works in and is very intimidating and bullying of her to take the billboards down. And we are left with the impression that this man is trying to cover his trail and doesn't want the heat turned up on him. And he, in fact, is the rapist and murderer who took her daughter's life. It is as much as said in the scene. And that's the midpoint. Remember I said antagonist stronger than we thought they were? This is our first on-screen glimpse of someone who is possibly the antagonist. And I would say, unless you're really analyzing the movie structurally, as I am, you're going and really, keeping your head in the game. This is indie film. You think that's a murderer. The scene gives little other impression, and the murderer seems to have come to ground. And there's your midpoint. And I can say, I'm watching with my iPhone timer running. That's almost exactly 60 minutes in. End of mini movie 4. In mini movie 5, the Sam Rockwell character, Deputy Dixon, learns of Sheriff Littleby's death, and he goes bananas. He blames Mildred. He stomps across the street to where the advertising company is, busts in the door, goes up the stairs, and throws Red, the advertising executive, out of a second-story window. And he is busted off the force. We see Mildred, I think, maybe for the first time. I don't know if this is ever said in the film, Hal, and if there's dialogue said in the film. You can remind me if I'm forgetting something. I don't think it's ever said in dialogue, but we're given the impression that where these billboards are is the site of her daughter's rape and murder, because she plants flowers by there. She has a scene where she speaks to a deer, intimating that it might be sort of the reincarnated spirit of her lost daughter, and later on we'll see that the sites of the billboards are very, very important to her and represent her daughter's life, even if this is not the site. Did you get the impression? Because there are lots of shots, sort of lingering, ominous shots of the ground beneath the billboards, as if Angela is buried there. And I don't know. I have no idea if she is buried there, if it's a coffin elsewhere, or what happened. But you came away with the same impression, right? That was never said in the film. That's where it happened. And we see her there, and that night when she returns, all of the billboards are set on fire, and we are certainly led to believe that Sam Rockwell did this, and Mildred thinks so too, because she goes to the advertising agency that night and goes up to the second floor window and throws a series of Molotov cocktails. And for burning my billboards, I will burn down your police station. But what she doesn't know is that Sam Rockwell is in there, turning in his keys and getting the second letter, written by Chief Willoughby to him before he died. The second letter says to Sam Rockwell, I know you always wanted to be a detective, and you're missing one thing, and that is love. And there in movie 5, I would say Sam Rockwell's character changes, because as he notices the building is on fire and he is trapped inside, he grabs one thing, not the letter, but the file on the Angela Hayes murder. And he throws himself through a plate glass window and rolls onto the street on fire. End of mini movie 5. Now, here's the big structural difference. There's nothing more spectacular in the film than the burning of that police station.
Mm-hmm.
I would have saved that for mini-movie 6, mini-movie 7, where things are getting more spectacular. But here, as far as spectacle goes, as far as life and death, daring do goes, we're sort of peaking offbeat, if you follow me, and kind of announcing suddenly our film isn't about that and is not like that. Just as we're saying in the beginning, it's not your standard thriller because we're not showing the murder before the credits. So I was quite taken by that. But yet it is there, and yet it is structural. On to mini-movie 6. Mildred is not a suspect in the fire, thanks to the Peter Dinklage character, a minor character, so there's a crush on her, as established earlier, who gives her an alibi in exchange for a date that they will have later. In the meantime, she reads Chief Willoughby's letter to her, the third letter, that says he always hoped that their murder would be solved. And he actually foreshadows how it will, we think, be solved. Mildred and Peter Dinklage go out on a date, and there Mildred runs into her ex-husband and his very young girlfriend, and they have a confrontation. These characters we've seen before, they're not really important until now. And her husband says, I think the key thing that says to me Mildred's character doesn't really change or only arcs downward. He says, those billboards aren't going to bring her back. And Mildred says, neither is marrying a 19-year-old girl. And her husband says, I know. And the difference is that I know. Mildred doesn't know this. Mildred doesn't know this can't be put right. This isn't a beetle you just flip off of its back onto its legs, much as you want to make it right. This is too big and too monumental. And when a person who likes to make things right meets a situation that cannot be put right, they are headed for tragedy. At the end of mini-movie 6, she and Peter Dinklage have a fight, and he also challenges her more morally. I would say, of the love interest such as there is in the movie, there's our girl loses boy moment, and shortly thereafter, Mildred learns that it was her ex-husband who burnt the billboards down, not the deputy, not the Sam Rockwell character. And there's your end of 6. She realizes her mistake and her assumption and the horrible thing she's done in revenge. Remember, she starts out trying to get revenge for one thing, her daughter's death. She ends up taking revenge very violently against innocent parties. There is a downward arc, morally. And there's the low point for our hero morally, that realization. End of our second act. Do you follow, Hal?
I do.
Okay.
It actually was
the third act.
They did such a good job of making every one of those turning points really emotional. Absolutely,
yeah. And that is a surprise. I mean, we are sure Sam Rockwell burnt down the billboards. After what we've seen him do, the minute he got the news, when those billboards are on fire, we said, the deputy is taking his revenge. There's no question. And he's been more pissed off about it than anybody the entire movie. So the ex-husband is a surprise and a very good one that really, should throw Mildred's viewpoint about revenge into a different light. As I think you'll see, kind of fails to do so. And this is why I would say she's a tragic character with a downward arc. So in mini-movie 7, Sam Rockwell, as foreshadowed in Woody Harrelson's letter to Mildred, overhears some guy talking in a bar. It's the man we saw at the midpoint. And he is bragging about the rape and murder he committed. Sam Rockwell overhears him in the next booth. And very cannily, still a cop though he's lost his badge, very sharply, though he is drunk, managed to get the guy's license plate and a DNA sample. And he takes a beating to do it. So what has happened to his character? Thanks to Willoughby's letter, he risked his life to solve the Angela Hayes murder, and now he's doing it again. Is he coming around to the great lesson of what a detective really needs is love, to be loving? I would argue that he is. He brings his DNA into the station. He asked it for the test to be run. He reports to Mildred that he got the killer's DNA and that he thinks the guy will be arrested soon. But the twist at the end of Minuit 7 is the DNA coming back and this not turning out to be Angela's killer. End of Minuit 7. Ready for Minuit 8 and the wrap-up?
Let's do it.
Okay. Sam Rockwell, Deputy Dixon, calls Mildred Hayes again and says, look, I heard this guy in the bar. He may not be your rapist, but I know he's a rapist. And I got his license plate, and I know where he lives. Francis says, where? He says, Idaho. And she says, that's funny. I was just leaving for Idaho tomorrow. Sam Rockwell says, do you want some company? And the last scene is them driving off together to Idaho, presumably with revenge on their minds. So this character's arc is from seeking just revenge for her daughter's rape and murder in a terribly cruel way, and arcs to, I don't care where I get revenge, I'll take it on anybody. And though she apologized to Sam Rockwell at the end, I don't know how we can call this a morally upward arc for that character. And even Sam Rockwell, who briefly saw love there at the end, seems to be on her page with taking revenge for revenge's sake against any rapist at any time. And so that's doing a thing, and I think is a dark choice for an indie film to make. It's tragic, honestly, and something you will rarely see in commercial film, except perhaps for a villain, which is another reason that I say, in a way, Francis seems to be, Mildred Hayes seems to be more the antagonist than the protagonist. Make sense?
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting choice. It's like,
yeah.
Because the normal choice would be to wrap up the actual murder, right?
Right.
And instead what we saw was, okay, kind of what these characters have evolved or devolved to.
Right. Well, that would be the uplifting story of a poor mother who lost her daughter and drove the police to solve a murder they otherwise would not have. Right. And you could slap that right on the Lifetime network, I would think. Right. But this is doing something quite different, and it's really saying, you're not going to be able to make this right. Some things are so horrible that they're beyond our ability to make this right. And even if had McDonough chosen to have her catch the murderer, I think he still would have said, and yet it's not satisfying. She felt like that would make it right, and it doesn't. But he doesn't, which even more says it, and even more starkly, and to use your word, raggedly, says so at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a well-written movie. It had, from a structural perspective, it did all the things that you're presenting, and in a way that was both very character-oriented and very emotional, and also wasn't quite as commercial, but still was incredibly well done.
Absolutely, and is getting such critical raise that the budget they're doing at will be profitable and get everybody who worked on it all kinds of work.
Yeah.
There's room for all tastes in the marketplace. If that's your kind of film, if that would be your favorite film of this year or ever, there's room for you to write it, keeping your budget down, and room for you to make those structural choices, and a necessity still for you to use the mini-movie method.
Yes.
We see it here. We see it in commercial films. We see it everywhere. it's the one commonality is great structure.
And I would say, if for people who are on the phone, if you haven't spent a lot of time with structure, even now that Chris has gone through and explained this, you're going to start seeing these structural points pop out at you when you watch the movies. If you haven't watched this movie, I would absolutely go see it. Just now that you've heard this analysis, just watching the movie will be an education for you. But let me say this, because a lot of times people tell me, I'll look at their actual pitch and I can see structural problems in it, as in structural problems that are in the script. And they'll say, well, I've already written 8 scripts, or I've written 10 screenplays, or something like that. And it's like, right, they did that. But what they didn't do was they didn't master structure. And so, a lot of people don't know this, but when you start pitching to producers, they're going to see if you have structural problems.
Right.
When you get it into, whether you get into agents, managers, producers, they're probably going to hand the script to a reader. The reader who's going to read it knows structure inside and out. They read 500 screenplays a year. That's their job, is to do coverage reports on those. So you're not going to get away with having a bad structure or having a structure that nobody can identify. Inside the industry, people know about this. They understand it. So you need to master it. And I'll tell you this, Chris, I've done a lot of interviews with A-list screenwriters. One of the things I've done is ask them about their process and how they went through and became somebody who was that trusted by the studios and all that kind of thing. And every one of them told me they took a period of time where they just mastered structure. It's one of the key elements here. So let me kind of walk you through what we're about to do in this 30-day class. For those of you who want to write your next screenplay, this is a great opportunity to do that and to do it very quickly. The class is titled How to Write a Screenplay in 30 Days Using the Mini-Movie Method. For those of you who want to master structure, by the time you're done with this class, you will never have a problem with structure again. And we say that for a couple of reasons, but basically what it comes down to is when Chris and I designed this, we were looking at how do we make it as easy as possible for people to see deep into their structure. Now, right now we're just kind of talking about it, right? We're explaining structure, and that helps. And watching movies and learning it, or reading screenplays and learning it, that helps too. But really, honest to God, I've written a bunch of screenplays. I went through and analyzed hundreds of screenplays before we ever got to this point. But once we started working with structure at this level, there's so many things that I've seen since then that I understand, and you're going to see in a minute how Chris understands it when we get to the 90-second logline challenge. If you don't understand structure, you're in trouble, I'm telling you. So if you want to follow along, you can just go to screenwritingu.com/classes/MMM. Again, that is screenwritingu.com/classes/MMM. And in just a minute, once we're finished with this, we'll have Chris do the logline challenge, and you'll get a chance to see what could you create if you were a master of structure. What could you create in 90 seconds? But real quickly, this is an online class. It starts tomorrow. It goes, normally it's 30 days. Here we have some holidays in the middle, so we're going to take a little time off. So it'll go from December 4th until January 8th, plus or minus. During that 30 days, there's a couple of things that we were here to accomplish. We wanted to make sure, first, that you learn structure, that you learn this mini-movie method in much greater detail. Now, again, this is something we can talk about easily, but the truth is it's got a lot of depth. And if you learn what it is that causes it to work, you'll not only understand this structure better, but you will understand every structure you've ever worked with. Second thing we wanted to do was to be able to have you write a screenplay in 30 days. If you're hoping to make it in this industry, knowing how to write quickly is really important. And once you've gone through and actually written something in 30 days or so, from that point on, you'll have the confidence to know that you can do it. If a producer asks you to finish a script in 6 weeks, you know you can do it, right? And that's a different thing, to have that deep inside you. The third thing is we wanted to make sure that you really understood this transformational model so that every screenplay you write from now on has a journey that an audience wants to go on. And by the way, that journey is built into the structure. So a lot of times when people have a journey problem, it's because they don't understand structure. A lot of times when people have a problem where they have a great first act and then the second act just kind of dies or it lulls, it's because they don't understand this part of the structure. So the objective here was not just to have you be able to quote, oh yeah, here's where my structural points are, but actually have you be able to write in such a way so that when the audience goes on this journey, from the moment they're hooked in, they never have a second where they're not deeply engaged. So that kind of stuff is really important. As you go through the program, a couple other things are going to help happen for you. One is it's going to build your confidence. It's going to keep you from getting stuck, especially in the second act. So if you've had that problem, that goes away. And you're going to learn this in small, manageable steps as you write your next screenplay. Now, for examples, Chris and I chose to pick movies that had all been either Academy Award-winning movies or had been blockbuster successes. So we went to the two different types of success in this industry, and those were the only kind of movies that we analyzed. We also analyzed movies in 5 different genres, so you could see, how this might apply directly to the genre that you're working with. So we're talking about movies like The Sting, which was an Academy Award movie and a blockbuster, District 9, The Proposal, The Hangover. All of these were big successes when they came out. The King's Speech, which was an Academy Award movie. Alien, which was a huge blockbuster success when it came out. Argo, which also won an Academy Award. 12 Years a Slave. All of these movies have had the kind of success that you want to have. So you jump in the program. If you're interested in improving your structure, if you're interested in writing a screenplay in the next 30 days, jump in the program, go through it with us, take action every single day. By the end of 30 days, you're going to have solved one of the biggest problems that writers have, and you will have created your next screenplay. Last thing I wanted to say on this, normally the program sells for $297. We didn't reset it. Right now, usually as of today, the day before the class starts, it's full price. Somebody in our office made a mistake, and so you can still get it right now at $247, which is $50 off. So right now you can save $50 because of our mistake, and start the class tomorrow and move your writing forward in a big way. So if you'd like to do that, again, just simply go to screenwritingu.com/classes/MMM. Again, that's screenwritingu.com/classes/MMM, and you get the $50 discount today. So, having said that, Chris, let's jump on in and talk about what's next. So you're going to create a screenplay. I'm going to give you a log line in just a second. I'm holding it back as long as I possibly can. You're going to actually create a story right in front of us right now. Is that true?
I guess we'll see. But yes, I'm confident that I can create a story, maybe not a full screenplay of 120 pages, quickly with the mini movie method.
Right. And by the way, Chris has done this 15 times before. That may sound like, wow, it's simple. I still think it's not simple. It's quite a feat, but this will give you a chance to see what's really possible if you master structure. So Chris, I've got 5 log lines in front of me. You haven't seen any of them. I just want to ask you, pick any number you'd like, and I'll give you the log line.
Well, I think you probably are trying to hide the easy ones at the end, so I'm going to go with 5.
Okay, all right. I was thinking you were going to go with 3, but okay. All right. This one may be a little harder than the number 3 one.
I thought you were trying to fool me. Okay.
No, no, but that's all right.
All right.
Let's see how you do on this. So this one is by Amy Zambo. I think that's the pronunciation, but her last name is spelled D-Z-A-M-B-O. So Amy, this is her log line, wanting to give normality a chance, 2 serial killers decide to have a baby. So that's the whole log line, Chris. I'm sure there's,
okay.
So wanting to give normality a chance, 2 serial killers decide to have a baby. Okay, you good?
Wanting to give normality a chance, 2 serial killers decide to have a baby.
Yes.
For lunch or together? I'm going to guess it's together.
Yeah. Let's just assume it's together.
Right.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to start the stopwatch. Are you ready, Chris?
Whenever you are, Hal.
All right, go. So while Chris is doing this, so he's now going through and trying to figure out how he's going to tell us a story based on this log line. Let me tell you a couple of things about how we're choosing these and the process that's going on. First, everything Chris creates here belongs to Amy. So Amy, here's what I want you to know. Anything Chris says in the midst of this, if you like any of it, use it. So even though we're using this as an example, this is essentially Chris is working for you for free right now. If you don't like anything he says, don't use it, of course, but usually he comes up with some pretty good stories. You never know what it might do for you. For the rest of you, when I was looking at these and trying to choose, basically I was looking for a hero, and in this case the hero is the serial killers, or maybe the baby, who knows. I was looking for a world, and the world in this case was actually the world of these 2 people that is unique and interesting. A potential force of antagonism, so in this case that might be normality. It might be something else. I don't know what Chris is going to come up with. And then some kind of conflict. And so again, this one has implied conflict. That's why I told Chris it may not be as easy as some of the other ones. Just a couple of quick disclaimers. Chris's job here is not to be perfect. He's not trying to be perfect. He's not trying to create the perfect story or the perfect structure or any of those kinds of things. Basically, what he's going to do is just show us how each of the mini-movie method beats can be used to create a story. He's also not trying to guess Amy's story. That's not his job either, because Amy's not, she may be, hopefully she's on the phone, but she's not present where Chris can interview her. That's not his purpose. So his purpose, again, is simply to show us what could you do if you really only had a short amount of time and you needed to create a story. And sometimes this happens. Sometimes a producer will give you, here's my idea, come back to me in 24 hours or 48 hours and give me a treatment. We've had writers who have gotten deals specifically from that request just using the mini-movie method. So now you get a chance to see how that works. So, hey, Chris, I've gone over. I'm sorry. But you had your 90 seconds.
I can't believe you gave me extra time. I've been waiting for like 10 seconds.
Oh, really? You've been waiting, huh? Okay, well, let's do it. Let's see what you come up with.
Okay. 2 serial killers decide to have a baby. Fade in. The day Jennifer Lawrence is born. This is a prologue. The rest of the movie will take place sometime after this. A baby is born. The baby's mother is killed, murdered. Dissolved to 20, 25 years later, and now we meet Jennifer Lawrence. Ever since her mother disappeared or died on the day of her birth, she has been hunting her mom's killer. And this is a killer that only she knows about or thinks really exists, called the maternity killer or the labor killer. His only victims, women who are having or have just had a baby. And she has been seeking revenge on him ever since. I'm doing this to sort of mitigate the morality of having serial killers as your protagonists. So she only goes after other serial killers. And in the intervening 20 years, she briefly had a mentor who picked her up when she was 10 or 12 and told her about the maternity killer and sent her on her quest and taught her everything she knows about serial killing. But this man eventually vanished, and she met an FBI agent in the serial killer unit who, when he came in to bust her and the mentor, took pity on her when he heard her story and never arrested her. In fact, he married her and has been helping her out with serial killing ever since. But they never have gotten the maternity killer. That's our status quo. And the call to adventure comes when, let us say, Channing Tatum as the FBI agent and Jennifer Lawrence as the serial killer hunter realize Jennifer is pregnant. And there's your call to adventure. That's right in the log line. Make sense?
So you're saying Jennifer Lawrence is the female serial killer in this movie?
And her husband is the male serial killer who threw in with her and started his serial killing, seeking revenge for her. So
and
Jennifer
her
Lawrence
husband is the FBI serial killer?
He is an FBI agent serial killer.
All right, cool.
Okay. In Mini-We 2, Channing Tatum is saying, well, let's retire. We're never going to catch this maternity killer. The heat's getting too hot on us. They're right on our trail. Let's just settle down and raise a family. Jennifer Lawrence is much more, let's take a break. But at the end of Mini-Movie 2, a calling card is left on their doorstep from the maternity killer. Maybe a bloody baby booty or something like that. And Jennifer Lawrence remembers, I found one of those in my mom's stuff. I never met my dad, but my mom had one of those bloody baby booties. Maybe the victim is picked out and harassed and stalked by the killer well before she gives birth. And maybe I am the next victim of the maternity killer. End of Mini-Movie 2. End of Act 1. Now that she's pregnant, she may be able to catch him and do what has evaded her entire life. Through Mini-Movie 3, all of the things you do when you're pregnant, painting the nursery, setting up the house for the kids, finding out that it's twins, but not learning the sex. Going to baby group, learning to breathe, Lamaze style. But Jennifer keeps on her agenda secretly, not telling Channing. She's still after the maternity killer. And we cut away from our heroes toward the end of Mini-Movie 3, and we see a pregnant woman murdered, obvious by the same killer that they've been seeking for years. And when Channing Tatum is called to the site, they take a blood sample, which they believe is from the killer. And because Jennifer Lawrence has been having a lot of DNA tests recently, he realizes it's a match for her DNA. End of Mini-Movie 3.
Wow.
Is Jennifer Lawrence the baby killer? The maternity killer? Jennifer Lawrence says, no, this is obviously a frame-up. He knows I'm on his trail. But now I can be the bait for the trap. And they decide to draw the maternity killer out of the shadows by putting her out there and letting him come and attack her and try to murder her. And when they do, he is unmasked as her mentor from years and years ago. You take a blood sample over them, they leave it the case. And further, To throw her off just before she gets the drop on him, he reveals that he is also, and always was, her long-lost father. He escapes. Channing and Jennifer, frustrated again, know that he's out there, know that he has plans to kill her. End of Mini 4, the midpoint. We're halfway through. Channing Tatum begins to conduct his own investigation of all the cold cases of the maternity killer now that the DNA is out there. And he realizes that this DNA was present. Jennifer Lawrence, his wife, the mother of his child, DNA was present at every one of these murders. And now he's certain that his wife has been the maternity killer she convinced him to pursue all of these years. And he's been right under his nose. And boy loses girl. But before we end Mini 5, we cut away to the mentor, who seems to be talking to Jennifer Lawrence, until we realize Jennifer Lawrence had a twin sister she never knew about all these years. And that has been the protege of the mentor, helping him perform these maternity killings as he was having Jennifer Lawrence come after the maternity killer. He's been playing both ends against the middle in a sick game. And that's why he can leave DNA, Jennifer Lawrence's DNA, on any crime site he wants to, because it's the same DNA. Identical twins have the same DNA if you didn't know how. Mini movie 6. Jennifer Lawrence, just as Channing Tatum leaves her, goes into labor. She goes to the hospital, but as she gets there, she is captured by her twin sister, perhaps in a surgical mask, and spirited away from the hospital. And we learn, as the mentor and the twin sister reveal, that their plan is to take this baby, come back to Channing Tatum and apologize, and for her, the twin sister, to steal Jennifer Lawrence's life, while Jennifer Lawrence lies dead in the delivery room that they have set up for this purpose. End of Mini Movie 6. Low point?
Completely.
Okay. Channing Tatum realizes what's going on and shows up just in time. As Jennifer Lawrence is giving birth, he is alternating between gunplay and Lamaze coaching against the twin and the mentor. He manages to birth both babies and put the mentor and the twin down in a giant action scene in the middle of a baby birth. And at the end of Mini Week 7, he has triumphed. And Jennifer is holding their newborn twins. Channing realizes this is a chance for Jennifer Lawrence to fake her death because the twin is on record nowhere. The two of them vanish into the sunset with their two new twin boys, a brand new family, now avenged and safe, and giving up the serial killing, at least till the sequel. Fade out.
Wow. Well, I guess today is just about creating dark stories, right?
Well, I think when you read this log line, it's a black comedy.
Yes.
Right? We got unsympathetic characters. They're going to be our protagonists. One or the other of the serial killers would be. So our sympathy for them is going to have to be managed somehow. Yes, obviously this is dark. I think the comedy would be dark and over the top.
Right.
And I did try to manage the sympathy for the Jennifer Lawrence character and Channing Tatum's character by making it all revenge. If you're not going to do that, I think you're shooting an even smaller audience. But if you do it low budget, you'd still have a chance, Amy. I think in John Waters' Serial Mom, the protagonist is basically a serial killer, and if you like that campy sort of thing, you see it. That's obviously sort of a darkly comedic thing, as this is. There could maybe be a little less blood, and maybe not a murder victim in it, and maybe no one could die except the bad guys at the very end. I did give you one innocent victim of a pregnant mother there in Mini Movie 3. So there'd be ways to mitigate that, and maybe what Amy has in mind is absolutely dark. I don't care. They're all inveterate serial killers, and they're trying to have a baby. Maybe Act 1 ends when the baby's born, and it's all about them trying to manage Junior and stop him from becoming a serial killer. It's a very open-ended premise as we receive it, and obviously I created an antagonist here because I wanted us to be rooting for the two of them and try to create someone even more evil than two serial killers would be, etc.
So Chris, okay, so you just did this. I actually gave you about 100 seconds, I think, but
okay.
In 100 seconds, you created this story, and wow, this one's interesting and has multiple layers and all that kind of thing. But basically, what was the process that you used to create it?
Hal, in 3 words, the mini movie method. I used the mini movie method. I very quickly, as you're reading the premise, or before we even started, I had 1 through 8 written down over 3 sheets of paper here, and when you gave me the log line, I just started writing. Okay, and by knowing those turning points and what a mini movie 1 tends to do, and 2 tends to do, and 3 tends to do, I started making my choices as to how this story would go. And this is the pattern you're going to learn in the class, and this is the only trick there is to it.
Cool. Yeah, and you know what? I can't do what you just did in 90 seconds, but once I understood this structure, it's like, inside of 5 minutes, you can create a structure for a story. Inside of a couple of days, you could write the whole thing out in a pretty simple and strong treatment, so that you really know exactly how this story's going to go, and very clearly, it's like it's astounding the difference it makes. I think most people they just start writing. They don't think about structure, and then afterwards they come back and they have to try to fix something they've already written. This more is about deciding up front what's the structure that's going to make this story amazing, right? And then creating from there. So, that's just my opinion. I've heard you do maybe like 15 of these at least. Every one of them has been incredibly interesting. This may not be the path that Amy goes down, but you know what? I could see this actually being a real movie.
You'd like to think so, and I can see many real movie versions of Amy's log line here, and any one of them would have the mini movie method. It's just the shape it's going to take.
Right.
A twin is kind of a big choice for me to make. I did it sort of for the DNA and for some other reasons, but there's no reason that I'm not going to say there's no reason. You must use the mini movie method. If you want to have good structure, I would say when a movie is good and has a good story, it is doing this
right,
either by accident or by design.
Right.
And I want everybody listening to us to be able to do it by design every time, and not.
Well, and I think the people who think it's always by accident, they haven't talked to the writers for the most part.
Right.
When I talk to writers, even the A-list ones who say, "Wow, this movie just came to me," I'll say, "Okay, and as it came to you, did you think about what the ending was going to be, what the beginning was going to be, what the structure was going to be in between?" And they'll say, "Of course I did." And it's like, oh yeah, it just came to them through their understanding of high-level screenwriting skills, right? So, this is a chance for people to master that. So just to say this real fast, if you want to write another screenplay, or if what you want to do is master structure, mastering structure doesn't mean that you're going to reduce your writing or your creativity. In fact, it means you're going to funnel your creativity through this so that you have the basis for a great story before you even start. If you want to do one of those things, come join us for this class tomorrow. I promise you, in that 30 days, you're going to learn a tremendous amount about structure. It's not going to become something that you just know, like, oh, look, that's something over there, or that's something on a piece of paper. By the time we're done, it's going to be part of how you write and how you create. It's going to be another one of those tools that can make you great. So if that's what you're trying to accomplish, join us. This is, again, it's an online class. Just go to screenwritingu.com/classes/MMM, and right now you can still get $50 off. One more thing on this. The guarantee is this. If you don't like the class for any reason, by the end of the third day of the class, if you don't like it for any reason, as long as you email us, we'll give you all your money back. We absolutely guarantee our classes, and we take good care of our writers. So if you have any problems at that point, we will make sure that you're well taken care of. But I promise you, by the end of this, you will be a significantly better writer. You will not have problems with structure again. You'll be able to create stories out of just about anything once you learn and master this particular process. Chris, anything else that you want to say about it?
I'm really excited for you guys. I hope you see that it's there in the story we just did. The structure is there in an indie film like Three Billboards, and it's there in every commercial mainstream hit as well. And I think now that you've heard this pattern, and certainly if you take this class, you're going to see that this structure is there everywhere in every movie that tells a good story, whether that is a small personal tragedy or a giant spectacular space invasion. It's just going, they're going to happen, in this way. They are similar. This is what they have in common, and that is structure, and in this case, great structure.
Yeah. So yeah, just ask yourself if you would like to master this, what would it be like if you did that? And know that you'll come out of this knowing structure from now on. Every screenplay you write from this point on will benefit from it. And if you ever are interacting with a producer or an agent or a manager and they look and they say, wow, there's some kind of problem with structure, or we'd like you to change this, or what if you did this in a completely different way, you will be able to immediately go, okay, let's see, if I did it that way, then what would the mini movies be? You'll lay out your structure again and rewrite, and they will be surprised at the quality you could bring to the changes that they're asking for. This is part of making you somebody who's a pro and somebody who's much more creative. So if those things are important to you, just jump in, and I promise you, you'll be glad you did. So with that, let's close it out. Any last words, Chris?
Guys, I'm looking forward to bringing you into the mini-movie Brotherhood and Sisterhood and making better movies 2017 and 2018 and beyond. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you. With that, this is Hal Krosman and with Screenwriting U and Chris Soth saying bye-bye, everyone. We wish you guys the very best. Bye-bye.